Okay, before we get going again, let's tap into Kevin's one last. Or this is Alex. Thank you for joining us, Alice. Alex, I'm trying to be optimistic about the Marvels. However, the trailer looks like we're getting more of what we got from the last three MCU releases, which isn't a good thing. Well, I think that it's always hard to make a sequel, though. I think that that's something to be said. Sequels are always more difficult to make. I mean, look, there are it's not it can be done. It's just hard. And I think the fact that you had a Miss Marvel series to kind of introduce her, she can just come right into it. I think that's something to be said too. Um, I th- Look, I I am optimistic about it. I will say one thing too. I think that people want to see this. People want to see Brie Larson back. And don't forget, I mean, we hadn't really seen her. We'd only seen her one other time. I mean, we saw her in Endgame, obviously, where she was phenomenal. And then we'd only seen her one other time. And that was at the end of Shang-Chi. So we haven't heard anything. So let's take a couple of comments. With that being said, I'm holding out hope that it'll be better. Yeah. I mean, always go into a movie, always go into a movie, regardless of whether it looks like, with an open mind. And then reserve your judgment after. And you got to understand something too, Alex. This is only the very first trailer. So the very first trailer is supposed to get you interested in, um, just interested in it. So obviously you're an MCU fan. So the fact is, this wants to just give you a little touch, little breadcrumbs. When we get a second trailer, okay, probably in July or August, okay, then people will start to say, okay, this is what the story's about. Um, with that being said, Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny it's going to do a lot of money, Kevin. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to do a lot of money. A lot of money. And it has that perfect spot too. And when we talk with Jeremy in about a month, we'll touch on this. But this has the possibility to win 2 weekends. Okay. The first weekend on the 30th, and then the next weekend before Mission Impossible comes out. So I I don't know. I mean, it's a final one for Harrison Ford. Whenever you have a final film of like a franchise, it always does good numbers because it is the final one. So I don't know. We'll have to see about that. But let's move on to the next story. And this comes from Variety as well. But this is going to be talking about something that's been. So let me preface it by saying this: fads are everywhere in Hollywood, everywhere. Okay, you can go back to 10, 15 years ago. You had boxing movies and like Southpaw and Hands of Stone and Creed, and not even 15 years ago, but like 10 years ago. Most recently, we just had musical films. Bohemian Rhapsody, Rocket Man, Judy, Star is Born, even though that wasn't like a biopic. Um, Elvis. So today, it's all about video game adaptations, right? So we've had The Last of Us, we've had Mario, we've had, you know, other things. That being said, it's a fad right now. This is a fad, and it's going to be probably later on down the road. But here's the interesting thing. Okay, I say this with this caveat. Um, so here, comes from uh, Variety, and this is asking which video games should streamers adapt. Okay, so what they did, let's read the article and then we'll touch upon some of these. Universal, the Super Mario Brothers movie, Paramount's Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, HBO's The Last of Us, and Netflix's Arcane are just the start of a new wave of movies and television shows based on popular video games and tabletop gaming IP. From God of War and Warhammer 40,000 set up at Amazon Prime Video to Twisted Metal for Peacock, everyone wants a piece of gaming IP in a battle to gain new subscribers and reduce churn. But instead of fighting for whatever is popular and hasn't already been adapted, new data provided by fan community platforms and entertainment company fandom suggests what titles streamers, including Netflix, Amazon, and HBO Max, should be focusing on based on the gaming fan bases and their respective subscribers. So, real quick, so this is what they get when they get your data. You know, when they say, "Well, what are you into? Like sports or music or video games or movies?" This is what they do, and then they'll ask you individualized questions. So it's called market research, and they'll get your age and your, male, female, or whatever else, your income. So these insights are based on fandom's first-party platform cross-visitation data pulled from its proprietary data platform, Fan DNA, and tracks fandom's top 10 wikis for fans of each streaming platform. Per fandom's findings, which are derived from behavioral data and fandom's users versus a study among a sample asking about attitudes and self-reported information. So here's what all of these were. Apple TV viewers way over index for God of War. There's a God of War series already in development for that. But for Amazon Prime, where it doesn't register in the top 10, streamers should consider StarCraft and or Half-Life adaptations. These are both decade-old franchises with huge followings, stronger than average narratives, and the opportunity for great visual effects. Dragon Age and Elder Scrolls could be sleeper hits for a streamer, similar to The Witcher and The Wheel of Time. Final Fantasy, Horizon, Horizon Zero Dawn, Assassin's Creed, Fallout could be, quote, serious adaptations, end quote. The Rainbow Six video games are based on Tom Clancy novels, which have been a, long has been a source for successful television and film adaptations. Hunt for the Red October, Jack Ryan, Clear and Present Danger, Patriot Games. Freddy Fazbear from the Five Nights at Freddy's games series popped up for Hulu. This series is very popular with Gen Z, and is rumored Warner Media is working on a film adaptation already. Some of the IPs are already films of various degrees of success. Angry Birds, Doom, that was that horrible movie with The Rock, Resident Evil, and Mortal Kombat. We started thinking about how, right now, all of these streamers are starting to figure out what they can produce that's going to be unique and differentiated. Fandom CMO Stephanie Fried said, told Variety, "There's a real focus on continuing existing franchises because there's that belief that you have to have a much bigger leg up. Super Mario just came out and did huge numbers, likely due to the ability to lean on an IP that has been part of the people's lives for a very long time. For a while, this the way that this was happening was through comics like Marvel and DC, and through books like Harry Potter. And all of a sudden, gaming was the next place. There are so many games, different types and different types of games, and we're seeing all of these, all of one that has been developed into franchise and on screen onto other screens that have been successful. And yet, I feel like they've only tapped in the surface because comics and books have been always been a little more connected. But now gaming, it's going to be both ways, both developing from a gaming franchise into television, movies, and vice versa. While several of the game titles that show up in these findings have already been adapted for screen, many many by the platforms other than the ones that they align with best in the study. Fandom data suggests, quote, it's important for studios to consider what's a good content fit for a specific platform, streaming service, whether it's built from scratch, getting the rights to an existing content, or carving out a space to develop a different part of the franchise, end quote. And then see below for the fandom's data broken down by streamer. For example, fandom found that visitors to Peacock wikis are 37, this is their term, 37 more times likely to engage with Angry Birds than any other fandom, 29 times more likely to engage with Sonic than any other users, and so on. So, lot to digest. Let's get so real quick. So it just for that one, okay. Angry Birds is 37 times more. Sonic is 20. Just Dance is 19. Mario is 14. EverQuest is 12. Pokemon 9. Fallout 8. Dragon Ball 8. Minecraft 7. and Elder Scrolls 6. Okay, let's talk about it. A lot of stuff here. Um, this is the way to go right now, plain and simple. This is the way to go, and I think that you know it's one of those things that you're going to see a lot more of these happen. Um, I really, really think that this is just the tip. Somebody said it in the article. This is just the tip of the iceberg, guys. This is just the tip of the iceberg because they realize that there is so much money to be made in this stuff. So much. And if it's done right. And the thing is, it's because I'll be honest, I love Assassin's Creed. That movie with Michael Fassbender was horrible with Jeremy Irons. We don't talk about that because it was just a terrible. Anybody who's played and knows Assassin's Creed knows it's bloody, knows there's a story behind it, knows all of this stuff. He's trying to find his heritage. It just didn't work. Nonetheless, these could be remade if they're done right. And if these streamers, look, HBO Max, Warner laid down $100 million, okay? And The Last of Us got 8 million people to watch the last two episodes. The premiere episode of The Last of Us got over 5 million people, only second to The House of the Dragon, which we've got a story coming up later upon. But that's amazing. And there, as they said, there are so many games. I mean, you look at what Mario did, right? Mario just blew the doors off everybody for 5 days. $200 million for 5 days. Uh, and the thing is, the critics weren't too fond about it. It was 56% on Rotten Tomatoes for the critics, 95% for the fans. If it's done right, they can make a lot of money. Um, Kevin says Super Mario International box office total. Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, so this is going to win this weekend, okay? Um, and then you know, it's probably going to win the rest of the month. To be absolutely honest with you, Kevin. And then what will end up happening is once Guardians comes out, it's just going to. But then by that time, it's either going to be on streaming or it's going to be out of everybody's public eye because everybody's looking forward to Guardians. I think that you know, Mario's gonna, be interesting to see if they make a sequel. It really will. That being said, this is going to be. I think you're going to see a lot of these adaptations come out. Um, it all depends on number one. It depends on the streamer. Okay, it depends on the streamer, and it depends on what the IP is. For example, Halo was put on Peacock. And it didn't work. From everybody that I've talked to and watched it, it didn't work at all. Now, they've renewed it, but I don't see it lasting. Now, you take it something like The Last of Us. See, this is where the demographics come into play. Okay? So you take a look at something like The Last of Us, for example. Okay. It's a very. What Drunkman and Mazin did was amazing. And, moreover than that, they realized what their demographic was. They realized it was a four quadrant show. Okay? You're talking about a show like The Walking Dead, which was a comic book, like video games, 18 to 34, and they did a phenomenal job. So, the, you know, not to mention, okay, not to mention, let's talk about um you have movies out there. For example, Doom. People forget Dwayne the Rock Johnson did Doom 25 years ago. I wouldn't be shocked to see them, whoever has the rights to it, remake that into a series. Okay? Assassin's Creed. I think that works better as a series. Okay? It's not a 2-hour film because you have a lot more time. You know, I think that it could really, really do a lot of good things. And if you tell that, and that's one thing else that you got to understand too. People could only watch The Last of Us on HBO Max when it's exclusive to that streamer, and they say yes. they'll subscribe. They'll subscribe to it. And that's a fact because they want to see it. Whether they're curious about it or whether they love the game like myself, let's say The Last of Us or whatever it is. They love the game. Um, Video game adaptations are here to stay, and you're probably going to see this for the next 5 to 7 years. Don't be shocked if you're going to see, more television or video games for television streamers, and don't be shocked if you're going to see movies. And people are going to say, "Oh, we're tired of it." No, you're not. Otherwise, you wouldn't be going to the movies to see them or watching the streaming shows to see them. So it all depends on a couple things. Like I said, number one, it depends on the streamer. Number two, it depends on the IP. Okay, and number three, it depends on what your demographic is for that IP, or not only for the IP but the streamer. So, and that being said, do you think Disney Plus will win major Emmy? Um, I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be. I mean, look, they've been nominated before. I mean, I don't know if they'll win an Emmy, but I would say this much, Kevin. I think, and I've said this before, I think The Last of Us has a real good shot of cleaning up the Emmys. No joke. No joke. Because here's the thing it's going to, production, Bella Ramsey, Pedro Pascal, okay, not only acting, but the behind the scenes, I think that's got a real good shot. I would love to see a Legend of Zelda series, although it would take a huge commitment as it would be very expensive to make. But see, that's the thing, Alex. And I understand that. And by the way, that would be a very cool series to see. But when you have a streamer that put $100 million into The Last of Us and HBO Max, okay, $100 million. Every single one of those episodes cost between $10 to $15 million to produce because of production, because of they did it right. Okay, if they put in $100 million, they could easily make that. They could make a gritty, maybe not a gritty, but a realistic Legend of Zelda, and it would be a great um, fantasy video game type of adaptation. I have no doubt in my mind they could do that. So, as I said, it's going to depend on the streamer, it's going to depend on the IP, and it's going to depend on a bunch of things. I think that video game adaptations are here to stay for good. Anyways, guys, what do you think? Do you think that are you getting tired of video game adaptations already? Which video game adaptations would you like to see on which streamers? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and I'll get back to everybody.